Dan Phillips.
How you doing?
Back again, mate. What do you think?
Very professional, very impressed. It's improved a lot since we first met, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's cool, mate.
You know, from the back of a cinema to a proper studio.
Yeah, man. Yeah, the logo, that's my favourite part so far.
Yeah, I'm impressed with that.
So, last time we spoke, mate, I'm not going to lie, I was still in addiction.
Yeah.
And I thought by using a podcast and helping other people would allow me to beat my demons, which I was so fucking wrong with. But what it did do, it gave me a base to allow myself the ability to step into that circle and learn and grow. And from the biggest thing I took away from when we spoke last was ACEs.
Yeah.
Adverse childhood experiences or childhood events, whatever you want to call it. That was the biggest takeaway for me. And that was where I started to look into the shadow, like Carl Jung's shadow work and stuff like that. That's where I really learned to understand where the pain was and, more importantly, why the pain.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, from somebody who was in addiction for a long time, I've got like a bit of a quote now, which is fix the pain, fix the trauma, fix the addiction.
Yeah, I like that.
And so we're 12 months on, and I appreciate you coming on, mate.
No, thanks for having me back. Yeah. And I mean, that's important what you're saying as well, because I think so many of us, when we go for our childhoods, we don't know what everyone else's childhood. So you don't know what you've gone through isn't normal or isn't ideal until you compare it to someone else. So, you know, and perhaps it's a thief for joy. You know, we all wish we had better childhoods. But when the ACEs scale got made, I think a lot of people looked at the experiences and go, maybe that wasn't healthy. Maybe that's not normal. Maybe, and that forced that sort of introspection, looking at yourself in a different light a little bit. And we said before off camera, you know, we're not responsible for being traumatized, but we're responsible for our own recovery. You know, we've got accountability for how we move forward with that. And I think the ACEs is a good way of doing it. You know, it's a way of looking at, okay, so what in my life helped me become who I am now, and what actually created coping mechanisms that weren't being helpful at the time, but they're not helpful now. You know, what do I want to get rid of the next version of me in, you know, Dan 2.0 or, you know, Lee 2.0. Yeah.
For anybody who doesn't know, can you give a brief explanation as to what ACEs are and what the causes behind? Because, like, one thing I didn't understand at the time, which I do now, is the experience is traumatic. What happens inside you is the trauma.
Yeah.
And they're two completely different things. And a lot of my squaddy mates would say, you haven't got PTSD, you've never been to war. And it's not the experience, which in itself is horrendous or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But it's how the body perceives that traumatic experience, which is trauma.
Yeah.
So if you could give an explanation as to the process of what ACEs is.
Okay, yeah. I mean, can't do this in a way. Long story long. Okay, so it's not about the events. It's subjective. So you may go for exactly the same events at the same time and both react differently to it. So that can be down to things like our pre-exposure. So don't forget, I was ambulance service for a long time. I was a close protection medic. Dealing with someone in the CPR after a car crash, I've dealt with that many times. So me doing CPR on someone might not be traumatic for me. Bread and butter. Whereas for yourself or maybe the person next door, that's the first time they've ever done it. It's outside their scope of experience. So the effect on that and how that changes their body and their mind will become traumatic. So it's different, you know. So I know a guy, he's medic in Special Forces. He was SBS for a long time, and he was London Ambulance Service. Now, he's seen a lot of war trauma, and that didn't affect him as such, he says. However, when he ran over a dog, and he loves dogs, he went off sick for about a year with PTSD because he loves dogs. Dogs are a safe place, and that to him sort of messed up his sort of how the world should work. In war, people fight each other, but running over a dog on my own driveway, that's what messed him up. And like his mates give him stick for that, but that really affected him. So we have this idea of what's traumatic and what's not, and PTSD and trauma used to be seen as a soldier's thing. Actually, we're looking at more healthcare workers, more paramedics, more nurses have PTSD, and ACEs cause more complex PTSD, which is prolonged exposure trauma, than those two combined. So when it comes to ACEs, the way to look at our nervous system and how trauma works, it's about how our nervous system calibrates itself. So imagine like a computer, or a new phone. When you're born, you're a blank slate. You've got all the things that you inherited from your parents. We've got epigenetics and passed on trauma. That's another conversation for another day. Blow my mind. But how your nervous system, that's what's normal for me now. Remember the old mobile phones where if you charged it, First time you use it, the battery lasts longer than if you didn't charge it. That's how our nervous system works. So if you're born on a healthy, traditional birth, down the birth canal, you're happy, you get skin-to-skin contact from your mum as soon as you're born, you breastfeed you, and you latch on straight away, getting oxytocin, you're getting dopamine, your nervous system goes outside the womb, it's like inside the womb, this is safe, this is how it should be.
Yeah.
If you're born through maybe a traumatic birth, C-section, taken away, put in NICU for 2 or 3 weeks, every time you're crying, you're not getting food or milk, you're not getting oxytocin, you're getting injections and pain from other human beings, your nervous system straight away is calibrated off outside the womb is not safe. So those two babies will grow very differently with different pre-exposures to anxiety and to stress. Okay, so straight from birth, we sort of overlook that. There needs to be a lot more research into how that affects us, but our calibration for our nervous system is different.
So when we talk epigenetics, I've been studying methylation.
Okay.
So
that's a headache, isn't it?
So am I right in saying that methylation is the process of how your genetic coding amplifies itself? So from what my understanding of it is, we've got genetics, we've got DNA, that doesn't change.
Yeah.
The way the genetics work, the way that the energy that it provides, that's methylation.
Yeah.
From my understanding.
Yeah, and that's a good way of putting it. It's like your genetics, the hand you get dealt.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of studies show that in rodents, if you traumatize a rat, the next 10 generations of offspring will still be traumatized. Same for humans. So if you, as a biological father or biological mother, goes through trauma in their life, then what happens is when you get traumatized, I'll come back to the issues in a minute, and what happens is your body will change and adapt to make you harder to kill and traumatize next time.
And that's methylation, right?
Yeah. So trauma is not, it's only traumatic when the event is past.
Yeah.
During the event, it's survivability. So people who are traumatized are actually harder to kill.
Yeah.
If you look at it, just simplifying it down, and that's methylation. So how does it play out? And then what you find is when it comes to sperm, DNA, and the RNA passing on to epigenetics, our offspring is born more anxious, a more active amygdala, which is your smoke alarm in your brain, and more likely to respond to stress. So they're actually born with a lower cortisol level for stress, which means they're more reactive, which means that you've got a more anxious child. And that's been studied. Studies have shown maybe the next 3 or 4 generations. And that affects them because you want your generation, your offspring, to be born harder to hurt, harder to kill, and more survivable. So when it comes to ACEs, we've got these 10 questions. I can't remember the top of my head right now, but I mean, you can go to findyourscore.com. It's a PDF on there. I've got the 10 questions on there.
I've done my score.
Okay. I've done mine. I scored 9 out of 10.
8, I did.
8 out of 10. Yeah, and that's what I said before, we don't know what's not normal unless we compare to other people or compare to what the norm or the standard should be. And that's so subjective because if you're born in bloody, at the moment in bloody Palestine right now, or you're born in Ukraine, or you're born in North America, you're going to have very different social environments, very different stress on your parents around you. It's very socially constructed. But for based on the Western world, it's a good scale to say, look, okay, so studies look at 1 and 2 parent families, you know, did your parents separate or not?
Yeah. Or
sexual abuse. I mean, you don't need to be a genius and that can be harmful to the nervous system and you feel safety. You know, being physically assaulted at a young age. All these things add up to the fact that your nervous system loses its sense of safety. So before the age of 8, most studies show, some are saying 12 or 14, if your nervous system is exposed to these 10 events, then what we find is that's making us more wary about the people around us, less trust in the people, and also we're very egocentric as kids. So from a very, very young age, you have these what you call conditions of worth in therapy. So you're told if you tidy your room, you're a good boy. Here's some chocolate. Tidy the room, gets me chocolate. You messed up your room, bad boy, you might get a smack back in the 80s. Okay, maybe not nowadays.
No.
So you think, okay, so when you're a baby, I cry, I get milk. I cry, I get love. I cry, I get hugs. I get oxytocin. I get dopamine. I feel good. So you believe the world revolves around you. So when you're a kid and your parents are getting divorced, a lot of kids blame themselves.
Yeah.
Because we're egocentric. Well, if I'm good, I get chocolate, and I'm bad, I get a smack. It must be my fault that's happening. You know, when I'm good, I get to watch this TV show. So what we find is we personalise a lot of the experiences we have under the age of 8 years old. And that creates a sense of shame. So we believe it's our fault that we got abused, or our fault we got smacked, or our fault that this happened. And it's not true. We know this as an adult, the logical part of your brain's not working. But when you look at the ACEs, how they affect a young person's brain who's still developing, then you're looking at taking ownership for events that weren't theirs to own. And a lot of the work I do as a therapist is trying to get people to realise, actually, it's not your fault that happens. Take away that shame. And trying to help people sort of like reparent themselves. Okay, so what would a safe environment look like? We can't change the past, but we can change how we learn from the past, how we view the past.
And how we feel about the past.
How we feel about the past. And unfortunately, sometimes I've actually had to cause harm. And so, a bit of a sensitive subject, but I had a woman who came to me as a patient in the last 10 years, I won't say where and when, and she came because of a car crash. And she was having flashbacks about the car crash. It came about while talking to her through the therapy over the next 10, 12 weeks. Actually, she was the product of incest.
Right.
And it was very common within her family, incestuous abuse. And she didn't know that wasn't normal. And she had her own kids. And they used to go and stay with her abuser, who was a family member. And I had to safeguard and say to her, look, okay, I've got to have a conversation with you now. This is not normal. This is not safe. But she had no idea it wasn't normal.
Yeah.
Because so I actually done more harm because I changed their whole past and how she viewed their childhood.
Is there a word for it where people can actually love the abuser? There's a certain phrase.
There's different phrases. They're different. I mean, people look at Stockholm syndrome. That's sort of been, it's been debunked a little bit. That was about trying to say, and that all it was is when there was it was a bank robbery, wasn't it, in Stockholm, and when the hostage takers released hostages, they didn't want to be harmed, and that was because the woman who cried didn't want anyone to be shot. It wasn't about the fact she fell in love with him, but that was mistaken. But especially look at most abusers, when it comes to like sexual abusers and so on, the family members. So even though they might be the person who caused us harm, we didn't know they caused us harm until later on. We realised that it wasn't right for some people. But it's still your mum, your dad, your auntie, your uncle, your brother, your sister. It's still that familial attachment as well.
Yeah.
So often you're dealing with that sort of duality of the fact that you've got a person who's caused you harm and didn't help your nervous system, didn't teach you proper boundaries, took advantage of you maybe. But then we've also got the fact that they're a family member.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of the rest when it comes to talking about abuse. So that's what ACE is about, really. It's about trying to help people realise that actually what happened in your childhood, this is how it's affected you. Oh, it might be how it's affected you, and it's about how do we sort of move forward from, how do we repair the nervous system.
Have you ever looked at your ACEs, Cal? No. Never done it?
No, never know what it is. Maybe you could tell the people listening what it is.
So that's what he's just explained then. I know you were busy, so you probably weren't listening. But
it's called under the desk and I'll talk about that one. I was trying to ignore call under the desk and plug the leads in.
So ACEs is adverse childhood events. So it's basically about experiences that you had as growing up through your life and this is one thing that I didn't know was even an early birth, and I found this out yesterday, that an early birth, so say like my brother was born 8 weeks premature, that's traumatic.
Yeah.
That classes as trauma, and you grow up with that trauma being held
like
in the body.
Subconscious memory of it.
Yeah. And then ACEs events, there's 10 questions, and I think the average is 2 or 3, isn't it? Maybe
anything over 4 is classed as significance.
Mine was 8, his was 9. Yours would probably be similar as well. Yours would probably be 8 or 9, I reckon. And it's important to realise,
It's important as well to not make it a death sentence as well. So just because you got a high score, so many people then give up and then use it as an excuse. It's not my fault on the challenge. No. Okay, this happens, but now you know what's happened and now you're aware of it. Now you can do something about it. It can be empowering as well.
When I first started studying, for people who don't know, I'm doing a level 7 in trauma myself.
Ooh.
But I came across this pyramid, and they called it the ACEs pyramid.
Yeah.
So the bottom level was epigenetics or genetics, transgenerational trauma.
Yeah.
And then it was sort of environment or parental trauma. Then it was sort of early years as a young child, growing up in that environment, whether it be, drugs, trauma, violence, whatever that may be. And that's when I came across the Bowlby's theory of attachment. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Like I've done a bit around neuroscience, so I understand the process now of a neuron under the influence of cocaine.
Yeah.
I know the whole process from start to finish.
It's one-way speed reading.
Yeah. And when I came across Bowlby's theory of attachment, it was talking about mirror neurons.
Yes.
So it was like, this makes so much sense. So what my interpretation of it is, let's take a child, for instance, and I use this analogy quite a lot, is you've got a young child, even if they've never experienced trauma before, they can, let's say they're really good at art. they're a good painter, and they'll paint a painting, and they go to their mum and dad, and they say, "Look, mum, look, dad, not now, I'm too busy." After 2 or 3 times of doing that, that kid will then mirror its environment, dissociate from that emotion, from that ability of drawing, and then learn to just sit and do nothing.
Those conditions are worse.
Yeah.
My pictures aren't needed right now. I don't get love from my pictures.
Yeah.
So put that away. What does get me love?
Yeah.
Sitting and being quiet gives me love. Sitting and being quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that there, you could attach that process or theory to so many different things in the world.
Yeah.
Drugs.
Yeah.
I'm not getting what I need. I feel like shit. Therefore, I'm going to change, suppress my emotions, and do this.
Well, and there's a massive link between addiction of any type and ACEs.
Is there?
For that same reason.
Yeah.
So what we find is, when we become traumatized and we have this unsafe environment for the nervous system, okay, don't forget your amygdala is either safe or unsafe.
Yeah.
There's no level of response, okay? So what we find is, so people go for a high number of ACEs. I think if you've got 4 or more, you're more than 3 times more likely to be a smoker. Nicotine, which is a stimulant. So because, I mean, I look at me, so I definitely found myself chasing the high. So I went to dangerous jobs. I've done the MMA, moved to America fighting over there. I've been a doorman for a long time. Just get punched in the face for fun, doing like martial arts and Thai boxing for like 5 days a week. When I've done the close protection stuff, I found myself looking for dangerous environments. And I found if I was in a safe relationship romantically, I'd sabotage it. I was looking for the arguments because it didn't feel right. I felt claustrophobic in my own skin. And what you find is, if you use things like nicotine and cocaine and alcohol, and ultramarathon endurance runners, so many people do ultramarathons have got a lot of compounded trauma in their life, and they're not running away from the pain. They're like running into the pain because the pain's familiar. So we find us chasing out that high because we get dopamine from the pain of it, and also our nervous system feels better. I mean, there's a lot of links between the similarities between ADHD and trauma. Yeah, because both need. So if a person without trauma or ADHD is cocaine, they'll get that stimulant effect. If you get ADHD, what you find is, because of the way the GABA neurons in your brain work, you do that cocaine and you actually feel normal now. Not high, but you actually feel where you should feel. And that's why we get things like, the medications to basically legalize speed in a way, the stimulants. And the same for people doing the endurance sports or people going through trauma. You find that you do that stimulants to feel normal because you need that high heart rate. Your cortisol levels are lower than everyone else's, so you want to increase it so that you feel.
And the cortisol levels are a lot lower due to trauma.
Yes, yeah. So I've got a friend of mine who's doing her doctorate work on biofeedback and looking at blood markers for trauma. Okay, and what she's found is that, and I can't give her results yet, that's her big reveal, but what they found is there are blood markers. You can do blood tests on people and look at who's traumatized and who's not. Working with a doctor over in America, and they're doing tests over in Ukraine on people coming back on rotations, and they're testing them who's likely to become traumatized, who's not. Like you are, right, you've got 6 weeks in the sin bin, we're going to give you some therapy, right, off you go, you're fine. So because we find that cortisol levels are lower, because we want to be more reactive, more responsive. The person who's been traumatized, we've seen that car crash for the person who wasn't.
So people who've experienced trauma, which is fucking everyone.
Yeah, to a degree, yeah.
Yeah, so different levels of trauma, obviously.
Yeah.
But so people who experience trauma will have lower cortisol levels as a baseline. Is that what?
That's right, yeah. Right. And that's a good point about everyone else to a degree. Trauma is effectively adaptation for survival.
Yeah.
There's a lot of movements in trying to get rid of the D in PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's not a disorder.
It's a natural response.
Yeah, it is a natural response, but it's a disorder when you're not in that environment. So if you are, we give the example of a soldier before. If you're a soldier and you've got, IEDs, Natasha drones flying over you, you've got shelling going on, you've got mates that you're losing, you're constantly living on that sort of, you're out on patrol, then your trauma response is making you hypervigilant, more aware, sharpen your skills, better sense of smell, better sense of taste, good tunnel vision, focal for vision, for looking at targets, escape routes. That's good. But then you put you back in civilian life where your family are there and you can't switch that off. That becomes a disorder. If you're a paramedic or you're in an abusive relationship, we look at domestic violence and relationships, then you being flinchy and jumpy and having that fawn response of giving them when you need to and knowing when to pick your battles, in that unsafe relationship, it's really important for survivability. We put you now with someone who's the dream partner, or make you single and you're back in the dating scene or living on your own, and you're still checking the curtains and scared to turn the lights off, and that's now become a disorder. So it is a natural response for survivability, but when it affects other qualities of your life and affects your life, and your ability to sleep is a big one. you know, and your memory feedback, then it becomes, and physical health as well, then it becomes a disorder.
Yeah, I get that. I think I was listening to Gabor Mate. I listen to him quite a lot now.
He's a wise man.
Fucking love him, mate.
Yeah.
Like, so my favourite quote is, addiction is a psychological and emotional response to human suffering. Love it.
Yes.
When people say to me now, what is addiction?
Yeah.
I ask, so him, and have you heard of Mark Lewis?
Yes. Yeah.
Neuroscientist.
Yeah.
So that's, I've done a small qualification from some university in America, just based around the basics of addiction and neuroscience. And this is a big topic of conversation, especially in recovery groups.
Yeah.
What is addiction? So I'll wait for Carl to sit back down before I ask you it. But my version, people say it's a disease, which is fine, because I know the body becomes symptomatic of disease.
Yeah.
Especially in opiate and alcohol addictions.
Yeah, you get that chemical dependence, don't you?
Yeah, so I was studying the heroin a couple of weeks ago on how the heroin floods the brain with, or it mimics endorphins. And then obviously, like a steroid addiction where your bollocks turn off, your brain switches off the endorphins.
Yeah.
So then, and this must be awful, where you come out of a heroin addiction, so the body doesn't have any pain modulators, so they can feel everything.
Everything hurts. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so I understand when people say it's a disease, but I believe by saying it's a disease, it lacks accountability.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the most important for me, because people say, oh, you had a disease. And I'm like, there's just something in the back of my brain going, no, you got yourself there. I always say you can't jump into a swimming pool and expect to come out dry.
I like that. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's something that gets quite heated, because I understand there's a lot of pain and turmoil.
I'm expecting YouTube comments now to be going crazy, and you know what I mean?
And that's fine, but this is from somebody who spent 20 years in a cocaine addiction.
Yeah.
You know, I'm allowed to have a view on it.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And the thing is, I could sit there and say, and everybody's belief system's different, right? Yeah. Everybody's different. Yeah. But I could sit there and say it is a disease, because I've heard people say you can catch it. It's not the flu. You know, this is something that we have to, through pain and suffering and trauma and our inability to emotionally regulate the body, we look for exogenous substances to numb the pain out.
Yeah, yeah.
So my question to you is...
There's professional suicide.
Yeah. What is addiction?
Do you know what? I see both sides of the argument. Me personally, and I'm not taking away from anyone who's going through addiction, I'm quite similar to yourself. Okay, so, I mean, people say addiction is a disease. They say obesity is a disease. Again, you don't wake up obese one day.
Yeah.
You know, these things develop. These disease, if you want to call it a disease, a disease-based model, it develops over time. Now, the NHS is torn over this. Nice guidelines say, for me doing trauma therapy, the NHS want me to let that person deal with their addiction first, and then with trauma therapy. I don't think that works.
Yeah, I think it's the other way around.
Yeah, me too. Take away the cause to use. So the way I see it is, remember the old seesaws and the old 90s playgrounds you don't get anymore?
Yeah.
Or the weighing scales
that you get. Scar.
That's just trauma for us, yeah. So the weighing scales. So everything we do in our life, everything is a balance of scale between self-medication, self-harm. So I might sit up late one night after a crappy day at work. I've been looking through patient files and writing letters for social workers. So I'm going to watch Game of Thrones, the whole series tonight, and I go to bed 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm bloody knackered. I felt good doing it, okay? But if I find myself doom scrolling at 4 o'clock in the morning every single day on TikTok, now it's self-harm. Same for, I finish a bad day at work. Do you know what? I have a beer with me tea, I have a glass of wine, you know, and then, you know, that's self-medication.
Yeah.
But then if I'm going for a bottle every night, maybe it's self-harm. And again, I'm not judging. People go for a night out and feel very anxious to have a line of cocaine to feel more confidence. They're self-medicating. And they're going for 3 bags a night, 6 days a week. That's self-harm, isn't it, you know? And everything we do, and exercise as well, you know. I used to train a woman who was a long-distance runner, and she was still going for runs on her broken leg with a stress fracture in the cast. That's definitely self-harm.
Oh, yeah, fucking hell.
That's not exercise being healthy. That's her using something that makes her feel better to excess. So I think whether you use the disease model or not, it's a behaviour we use to feel better and self-medicate. Whether you want to see that develops into a disease and what you class as disease, but you're right in that way. Just because someone have diabetes, or they might be obese, or they might have, I don't know, another disease of some sort, you know, you still have accountability for how you are during that disease.
Yeah.
You still have accountability for how your behaviours affect your recovery.
I agree.
We say we can't cure type 1 diabetes. That's another story for another day. But actually, I could choose not to eat a whole chocolate cake on someone's birthday. Or my foot will fall off,
Don't
you know.
need sugar.
Exactly, yeah. So I can manage myself during that disease. And nothing against them. You get fellowship and you get 12 steps programs and they do some really, really good work. But to me, if you've done that 20 years ago and you're still calling yourself an alcoholic, alcohol's still controlling your life.
So
even if you're not drinking it.
I on social media now, I speak to a lot of people in 12-step recovery systems and a lot of good friends.
Yeah.
A lot of good friends who are in AA, NA, etc.
Yeah.
One thing I'm doing a lot of at the moment in NLP is, especially with the guy who's mentoring, it's called the 6 Degrees of Why. It's his own program that he's designed.
Okay. Yeah.
But there'll be a lot of stuff in there that you would have heard of. So the first degree is an echo why.
Okay.
How we echo our environment, we echo our surroundings, we echo social media, we echo the voice of our parents, we echo the voice of our friends, all these things.
All the core beliefs that we get from around us.
Yeah. And that's what it's about. It's about, so when you talk NLP, at the bottom is identity.
Yeah.
And then the next layer up is beliefs, next layer up is values and behaviours, then it's skills, then it's environment.
Yeah.
And by going through these 6 degrees, one thing he's tasked me with doing, obviously not with yourself because you're educated on it all, is listening for echoes, listening for people's patterns, listening. So they're echoes, patterns, generational wise, emotional wise. And then you get into the existential wise and the purpose wise. But so where I'm getting to is in 12 steps, they teach spirituality and morality, which I like.
Yeah.
I like that recovery is recovery. The person's sober.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
But what it doesn't teach is your inability to find identity and purpose.
Mm.
You'll have people who've been in recovery rooms, they're 30 years sober, and they'll still identify as a recovering addict, which is fine for that person, but for me, it's not. So I couldn't picture myself in 30 years' time go, my name's Lee, I'm a cocaine addict.
No.
Because I haven't took drugs for 30 odd years.
Yeah.
So when you look at NLP, to identify as something, your environment has to match.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And it's that rebirth of yourself, post-traumatic growth. So it works for some people. Some people are almost fearful of using again. I know people, and I know people in 12 steps will argue these people haven't recovered. But I've got a good friend of mine who was under fellowship for 5 years, and then he hasn't been for about 10 years. He'll have a couple of drinks every now and then on the weekends, and he can stop when he wants. To me, that is a more rounded, healthier use of alcohol than complete abstinence because of fear.
Yeah.
You know, and nothing against anyone who uses 12 steps that works for them. But are you still letting that behaviour traumatize you? Are you apologising your behaviours? Where's it coming to action? You've got free will. And you can choose to have that drink if you want to, or you can choose not to because you don't want to, not because you're scared of not doing it again. What you saw the 6 the things that he's doing. Have you seen the power threat meaning framework? So I use that a lot with a lot of my patients or clients if I'm not in the NHS. So what happened to you? How did it affect you? And what's the influence it's had over you? Now we use that for trauma, but again, you talk about those echoes. We are the product of our environments to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what I mean? Where do we get those messages that boys don't cry? Where do we get those messages that girls wear pink and play with dolls? Where do we get a message that there is or isn't a God or gods or whatever? You know what I mean? It's about where's the individual in that. So I know 12 steps talk about a higher purpose and your higher sense of self.
Higher power.
But there also needs to be accountability on who you are as well. You know, I've got friends who are ministers, you know, and they say, oh, God works in mysterious ways or it's God's will. And I'm like, yeah, but I've also got a say in that as well. And if I've just messed up, then it's my responsibility. If I've chosen to drink to excess and fall over and sweat everyone at the barbecue, that's my fault.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I've chose to go off and, you know what I mean, get to a fight because I feel bad and I would feel hurt, then I've got accountability for that. So I think you're right. I think some models, and not everyone, I'm not typecasting, but you want any recovery group to be recovery focused, not illness focused.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen so many chronic pain groups, addiction groups, bereavement groups, and they sit around and they talk about their loss and the sadness, and no one's actually trying to get out of the bucket. Everyone's trying to just focus on let's all sit in the swamp together. And actually, it should be focused on the recovery. You know, how have you got out? How this hole? How do I get out the hole? How do we stay out the hole? How do we do it as a group and support each other, and not pull each other in again? And it can be all about the individuals in the group as well. You know, you've got some strong characters. You want them to be strong characters who are recovered or recovering, not dragging everyone else in. And that's the my criticism of recovery groups. They've got a place, you get a community, you get an identity, but then at some point you've got to leave that group and identify as yourself. Do you know what I mean? As well, this is me, and I'm not an addict anymore. I used to be. Do you know, it's me, and I'm not this anymore. I used to be, and I'm now this.
Yeah,
it's got to be a balance. You know.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things for me is again through the work I've done with John, the guy who's mentoring me, I've found out my Enneagram. So the way my mind works and how I interpret information and stuff like that. And I'm very much a forward thinker.
Okay.
So there's forward, present, and past. And I'm like 75% forward thinking as a person.
What's next?
Yeah. So even in conversation like now, you're speaking to me, but I can recognize it now. I'm taking what you're saying and thinking how I can adapt it in the future to what I'm going to be doing.
Pragmatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to, again, 12 steps, and this isn't me slating them because I've some amazing people I've met in them and they're brilliant, but it's very past focused, you know, and how we shouldn't do this, not, you know, how are we improving? And that through the stories that I hear, it's a lot of, you never hear of how I'm improving for the future, it's what I did in the past.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Illness focus. And that's a big thing with trauma-focused therapies. What we don't want is anyone to come to any therapist, and there's a danger out there because a lot of people will say they're trauma therapists and they're not skilled how to do it safely. And then, yes, there's a place to talk about the past. The story needs to be told. You need to nod to it. You need to acknowledge it happened, definitely. And yet you can work with the memories and change them so they're less traumatic in a way, have lesser effect, and we have ownership of them. But the last phase of therapy gets missed out. So I looked at the Judith Herman model I mentioned last time. We look at stabilization, we look at trauma revisiting, and we look at reintegration. You need to do reintegration. Once you've looked at the trauma and you knowledge has happened, the effect it's had on you, how do I now move on from that? How do I, trauma did not make you stronger. You survived trauma because you're strong.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, I take the superpowers of Marvel. We had our powers revealed to us because of what happened to us. It didn't make us who we are. But how do I use those powers now moving forward? Okay, so if I'm hypervigilant and I do struggle with overthinking, how do I make that work for me? How do I choose what I want to keep from that and what doesn't serve me anymore? You know, because every behaviour serves a purpose at some point in our life.
Yeah.
You know, if now drinking to excess so I can get to sleep doesn't work for me, okay, so what can I replace it with? Do you know what I mean? If, you know, doing a couple of lines of cocaine or doing ketamine so I can dissociate from the situation, that worked and I was in pain, if that pain's now gone, what do I do now with that energy? You know what I mean? How can I apply it? So, like you doing a course, doing a bloody level 7, which is, you know, hard as hell. Do you know what I mean? But that definitely keep your brain busy. That's going to keep you more stimulated than cocaine ever would do. Do you know what I mean? And some people, I said, ultra marathon run, endurance athletes and people who like to do triathlons and, you know, the ones who really do it testing. I've got friends doing it. But, you know, that's a different thing. So how do I reapply those same skills in a way that makes 2.0 version of me? Trauma, what's post-traumatic growth? You know, how do I grow from this? Not in spite of it.
And I think it's important to address the past. I made a post about it this morning.
Yeah.
When we talk about emotions, this is my interpretation, you might disagree or not. When we think about emotions of the past, so let's say, for instance, I'm really struggling with a trauma that's happened to me when I was 13 years old. Yeah. A lot of the time we'll revisit that moment as a 13-year-old child and not as a 37-year-old 6'6" fucking lad, man.
Yeah.
You'll revisit it with the emotions of a child.
That's true, yeah.
And I don't think I've spoke to you since. I've mentioned it a few times. I went to a Master Your Mind event last year in probably November.
Okay.
In Wigan. And this is where I came across mindfulness, meditation. All this shit works. I promise I'm living proof it works as long as you're willing to accept it and use it properly. And they did this mindfulness technique where we had to sit there, relax, close your eyes, and you picture yourself above your body.
Yeah.
Then you picture yourself outside of the building, above the clouds. Yeah. And when you came back down, your safe place as a child. Yeah. And it was my bedroom. And outside of my old bedroom, you could see the castle, Flint Castle. And they said, picture your childhood self. And I could I could see the DVDs on the walls.
Yeah.
I could see the pictures on the walls. I could see the pillows on the bed.
Yeah.
And I ran towards my childhood self and I give him a hug. It gives me goosebumps talking about it. And I hugged him. And that pain turned from pain to love like that.
Yeah.
Instantly.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that was like the key moment, but I'd done a lot of work before and after.
Yeah.
But that's the moment where I initially thought or initially realised that I do love myself.
You give that child a safety he didn't have at the time. You know?
And that's what I said. It felt like a coat of armour being wrapped around me as a child.
Yeah.
And that was the moment when I learned, because I hated myself my whole teenagers.
Remember I said about the shame, because we blame ourselves, what happens to us, because as kids we do.
Yeah. And that was the moment where I realised that I do love myself, and if I do the right step, the right work, and the right steps, this can improve.
Yeah.
And then a couple of months, don't get me wrong, it didn't change overnight.
No. Yeah.
But a couple of months later, I chose to stop drinking and using, and touch wood, I've not fucking drank. And me and Callum will tell you, we. I'm not going to name names, but a couple of weeks ago, I was doing some work here.
Yeah.
And a few people were on the ale.
Okay.
Not people that work here, people from other places.
Yeah.
And it didn't bother me at all.
So you're around it as well. Yeah. And that's because what you've done there is, without going into your history too much, the reason to use and dissociate isn't there in the same way.
Yeah.
You know, you've accepted it. So we spend a lot of time, it's like the Kubler-Ross sort of, bereavement, like cycle. So we spend a lot of time trying to deny it happened and feeling angry that happens. What you've done is you've accepted that it happens. I can't change it, but what I can do is I give this kid the love he needed. Because since the stage of, say, 13, that kid's been blaming himself and getting angry for what happens. So what you've finally done is you've let go. It's almost forgiving yourself for something you didn't do. And you didn't do it in the first place. No. But the kid still needs to hear that's not your fault.
And this was another big thing for me. For anybody that's listening to this, we blame ourselves for the traumatic experiences that we go through.
Yeah.
And I can honestly, hand on heart, say this now as a 37-year-old man, that a lot of the emotions that I feel didn't actually exist probably when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So we'll take the experience and the emotion, and also let's take fear, for instance.
Yeah.
Over 20 years, fear turns to aggression, or it'll show its face as aggression.
Yeah.
And by really digging deep into who I am as a human being, I've learned to realize a lot of these emotions that I felt towards my parents don't actually, or never actually existed to begin with.
Yeah.
They're sort of, how can you put it, symbiotic emotions of the other emotion.
Yeah.
So the anger I hold to, or the fear that I held towards them, or the sadness or happiness, whatever that may be, at the time didn't really exist. It's an emotion that I've built up over 20 years of after that experience. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, and this sounds harsh, but a lot of the time, don't get me wrong, there's really severe traumatic, is really degrading for children especially.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, the experience or the emotion attached to the experience is far worse than the experience itself.
That's true, yeah, and it's how we make meaning of it. It's like I was saying before, let's take the example without getting into anything of, we look at child sexual abuse, which is more, we live in an area, unfortunately, where it's extremely high.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's why I said.
It's massive in this area. I won't get to details on this now.
Yeah,
a lot of people watching this will be affected by that, unfortunately. And what we find is, again, like that woman who didn't know that her being abused wasn't normal.
Yeah.
So she had no experience to it. She had no emotion applied to it. It's only when she found out it wasn't right and her kids were in danger that all the anger and the shame came into it. And it's like, well, we know something's not right, but we don't know what it is. So there's so many people I work with, especially men, who don't, the brain turns off the memory of being abused. And we don't know what's happened to us. And then what happened is, 20, 30 years later, we get drunk and we have a flashback one night. So what the fuck was that? And then we start investigating and we get the nightmares coming back and then remember it. And then all the anger we've had for the last 20 years all makes sense. And then, because we don't like feeling angry, and angry is an umbrella emotion. So it hides fear, it hides upset, it hides disgust, you know. It's easy. Look, I've got a dog, Tank, big Labrador, softest thing in the world. He looks big and aggressive because he's barking. He's not. He's scared because he's not the postman. But he's terrified. Do you know what I mean? And that's what I think men especially, because we don't have that roadmap of how to understand our emotions, how to express our emotions, we go to our go-to, which is angry. You know, I said last time, I'm a caveman. I stub my toe and I look angry. You know, I'm hungry, I look angry. You know what I mean? I'm terrified. I'm nervous. I look angry and ratty, and I'm not. But that's the only way I know to express it. I've been taught a healthy way to express my emotions at a young
It's a
age.
flight response, isn't it?
It is, yeah. If I'm angry, everyone leaves me alone. I mean, I think about some of the stuff I experienced as a kid. I went down the route of trying to be bodybuilding and martial arts and fighting and guns and compensating much. You know, if I'm honest with myself, I was massively overcompensating from being this little fat kid. Do you know what I mean? He couldn't defend himself. But before I tried to do that so that those things wouldn't happen to me again.
Yeah. It's a defense. You're building a defense mechanism, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's a defense mechanism to an attack on your emotions.
Yeah.
And I think definitely I agree with that. As men, we do it. That's why we cover ourselves in tattoos and and you know, take steroids or go to a gym or you know, act a certain way. I acted a certain way with relationships. Where, and I know where it stems from now. It stems from childhood.
And it's also, and it sounds toxic saying this, and it's not meant to be, it's actually a really misguided act of self-love.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't do it if you didn't deep down believe that you mattered.
So what it was with me, and I did it, you know, for a long, long time. And touch wood, I'm still with me missus now, but there was a time where we almost separated because of it. Yeah. And it was just my brain would go into a certain, or my nervous system, or both, would go into a position where it was like, this is going to happen. We're going to have an argument. I'll cause an argument to get kicked out before that argument even happens. Yeah. So then it's my choice, not hers.
That's exactly it, yes.
Yeah. And I've done that my whole fucking life.
In for a penny, in for a pound. It's going to go wrong. Do you know what? Might as well. And it's predictable. So because you can predict the end, it's safe. Do you know what I mean? I've definitely sabotaged so many relationships, and I'm married to a therapist. You know, my wife, she's better than me, so whenever we're in arguments, she's a well better therapist than me. But, you know, she's got patience of a saint.
Yeah.
But, you know what I mean? Because self-sabotage is probably, I should have a tattoo on myself, you know what I mean? It's the go-to sort of behaviour for a lot of men, you know?
That's what these two tattoos mean now, so they're both Viking.
Yeah.
And it's like my version of yin and yang.
Yeah.
So that one's pointing forward, that one's pointing backwards. And it's sort of, we know where you've been, but let's find out where you're going.
Yeah, I like that.
And it was really important for me to realise that this self-sabotaging, I've done it my whole life.
Yeah.
I've dissociated and self-sabotaged my whole fucking life. And do you know the biggest value that came out of that is honesty.
Yeah.
I am so honest now that I can hand on heart say the last 4 months of my relationship have been the best 3 or 4 months of my fucking life.
Because you've showed up personally.
But one thing my addiction did was cause trauma to my girlfriend. A lot. Yeah. And she's been through some difficult times in her life. I won't go into it, but really difficult. Yeah. And, you know, she's got her own shadow, her own, you know, Jungian shadow that she's never really addressed. And that's what we're doing at the moment with John, is addressing her traumas as well. Yeah. And it's been magical, I'll be honest. It's been so important. And this is why when I speak to a lot of people who say, oh, the past is the past. It is the past, but it also gives predictability to outcome.
And it's only the past if you stop repeating those same behaviours.
Patterns.
Otherwise it becomes the present. Yeah. And self-sabotage, I see it as a suit of armour. Do you know what I mean? You put it on, you feel safe. And do you know why we keep using it? Because it works.
Yeah.
Until it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then when you've got to take it off because your arm is broken and it's destroyed too many things, you're vulnerable, you're raw, it's scary as hell. But then when you start being yourself, you know, it's like when a baby hedgehog's born, all the spines are soft and it gets harder. As you start being yourself and you show up and your relationship's been good because you've been there. My relationship started getting good when I started being me and saying, actually, do you know what? I messed up there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? How can I be more honest? How can I be more me? And it's parts of myself I really dislike and I want to change. But running away from them and trying to ignore them and spending hours in the gym or hours up a mountain trying to escape yourself doesn't work.
It's all dissociation, isn't it?
Exactly that. What I've got to do is sit down and actually have the conversation with myself and with her, with my family, and say, okay, how can I be better? And it's not about being better for everyone else.
Yeah.
It's when it feels better in here.
Yeah.
So for me, it's sleep. If I'm sleeping good, I'm on the right path. I can literally be awake 2-3 days at a time. And you know what I mean? That's because in my brain, something's not right there. And my brain won't let me sleep until I get it right. I hate that, but you know what? It keeps me accountable. Yeah.
Another thing that I've learned, when we talk emotions and dissociation and association, I'll put it this way. The emotions are the messengers of our identity, who we are as people.
Yeah.
So when you're emotional, that's your body, that's your identity, that's your spirit telling you something's either good or bad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we take somebody who's lying, for instance, we'll get emotional. He's fucking lying to me.
Yeah.
Because we value honesty.
Yeah.
Or value something that it's intrusively pissing you off.
Yeah.
And that's another important thing that I've learned this year, is that emotions are the messengers of who we are as human beings.
Yeah.
And I genuinely believe, right, if we allowed ourselves to step out of our own way in life, we'd have all the answers we need.
Yeah.
I really do. But
Yeah.
we overcomplicate life so badly to the point where we don't know whether we're going left or right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do it all the time when I sit down and think I've got 1,000 things to do today. Where the fuck? I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean, missus will go, chill out. I'd imagine you're the same because you're fucking left, right, and centre, aren't you?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go, okay, through the work with NLP that I've been doing with
Yeah.
John, I'll sit there, shut my eyes, and all I do is something simple. I picture myself sitting in the other chair
Yeah.
across from me.
Yeah.
And I ask myself,
Mental rehearsal.
what do I do now?
Yeah.
What do I do now? And then I'll snap out of it and go, right, let's do this first.
Yeah.
Do this first.
Yeah.
Because you're dissociating from the emotion,
Yes.
picturing yourself sat over the other side of the room.
Yeah.
It becomes more rational. You go back sort of, it's more like a grounding technique where you can think more rationally rather than emotionally.
I think this is not new stuff. So I'm looking at your book of Raven Walks Aurelius and, his book on meditations. And one of the things he says in there is, the problem's not the problem, it's your mindset about the problem.
Yeah.
It's not new stuff, but you're right, we overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
And we remove the emotion. Okay, so how do I be solution focused?
Yeah.
And
that all we've got to do is get back into the neocortex part of the brain.
Yeah.
Getting back into, so I learned, I think I told you, the triune brain model.
Yes, yeah.
Which is, they do the fist model. Yeah. So then you've got the reptilian, the what's it called? The emotional part of the brain. I forgot what it's fucking called now.
On the spot now, isn't it? But yeah, but you get your survival brain,
limbic
emotional
system.
brain, that's it.
The
Yeah.
limbic system. So then you've got reptilian, limbic system, and the prefrontal cortex.
Yeah,
and the
so that's survival, emotions, and logic.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the thing is, when you get stressed, when you get amygdala go, danger, danger,
Yeah.
and everyone goes in cold, your body goes to the beginnings of shock, the first part of your brain to turn off is your logical part of your brain.
Yeah.
So the best way to look at someone who's how many times do you get emotional? Joe Johnson goes wrong. You stub your toe, do you get angry?
Yeah.
Or how many people get drunk and become really emotional? I love you, mate. You haven't got a mate like that, it's probably you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But we've all, you know what I mean? Every group's got one. But what we find is when our logic turns off, our emotions come high.
Yeah.
And that could be emotional, which is low. It could be angry. It could be extra giddy and happy. But then beyond that, that's the reptilian brain that they talked about in the triune model. That's your survival brain. That's what keeps you going.
Yeah.
And we're very simple creatures. So we've only been around in this sort of type of species about 200,000 years. Not long, really. You think about Homo sapiens, the model we are now. But then you look about how we've moved on with technology in the last 200 years. And we live against nature.
Yeah.
So, the basic thing about sleep. So because we've got artificial lights, our vitamin D and our melatonin levels get messed up.
All fucked up.
So straight away we don't sleep properly. So we wake up out of sync with our own body clock.
Yeah.
Circadian rhythms are mixed up. So we're more anxious.
Yeah.
So you talk about the environments, you know what I mean? We create an environment to actually go against our own nature as an organism, which is going to cause that discourse straight away. And then we get things like we made up this thing called money, which doesn't actually exist. It's all numbers on a screen somewhere, And then we talk about we work. I don't get this done by this deadline. It's the end of the world. No, it's not. No one's going to die though without reporting on time, are they?
That's when people. So it's saying that if I don't get this done by this time, then there's going to be something negative happen. That's an echo or a pattern, right?
Yeah.
So then what I say is, says who?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who says it's going to be the worst thing ever?
Yeah.
Says who?
Yeah. And I think of old jobs of mine, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, I've had a really bad day. I'm gone. Did anyone die? No. Did anyone try and kill me? No. I've had worse days at work.
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to ask anything, Kel?
Technical issues.
It's been an hour, is it? Yeah.
Time flies.
Lucky now. We'll let him sit back down.
How's the beard looking?
So, does it sound all right though? First episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Ace.
Looking good. What was the issue with the camera before anything?
Yeah, it was we had it on autofocus. Obviously, I don't really know what to do with them cameras, so it's on manual focus now, so it's not doing that thing. So
looks all right, doesn't it?
It'll do, mate.
Yeah.
Last two questions. I've got a couple of things that I wanted to ask. Nothing's major. I think we spoke about everything that was major.
Yeah.
But when we talk, oh fuck, it's all right.
I know I used to be a medic, but it's my day off. I do mental health now. It's all in your head. Don't worry. Your leg doesn't really hurt.
All right, yeah. When we talk mental health, when we talk depression, anxiety, I've been looking at somatic therapies and somatic tools and techniques on how to ground us a lot more, because the way I see it, I think you mentioned this to me last time, is depression is memories of the past or emotions of the past. And then anxiety for me is you're worried about the future.
Yeah,
we need to be a lot more present in life, I think, and that for me has worked. So it's worked to the point where the emotions of the past, I'm slowly dissociating from them. Do you know what I mean? They're getting less and less and less, more frequent. The issues or the emotions that are popping up.
It's acknowledging them, but it's making them less vivid, less technical.
Yeah,
less relevant to your modern day.
Yeah. So I think when we talk anxiety or depression or bipolar, for instance, or addiction, and I know there's different pathways for issues, but if you can give one piece of advice just for everyday life for anybody struggling with, something that they're dealing with on a daily basis, what would it be? Just lifestyles, mindsets.
Oh, tough one. I think the main thing for me is don't deny it. Accept it. If you feel angry right now, okay, you feel angry. If you feel sad, you feel sad. If you feel happy, great, you feel happy. Whatever you're feeling right now, it's a temporary feeling. And that can be a good or a bad thing. That means happiness will eventually go because it has to, because you can't be happy all the time. Your sadness will eventually go because you can't be sad all the time. It will eventually change. Acknowledge what's going on. Big thing I think is really underrated is writing things down.
Yeah.
I mean, people do it on the phone, but journaling by hand as well, because it uses different part of the brain, not getting into too much. Yeah. So your thoughts and your feelings are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay? Your thoughts, or your feelings, your emotions come from inside. There's different things where they come from. Your thoughts are your interpretations of those feelings. You know what I mean? So I can feel anxious because I'm thinking this is going to happen. But actually, what is the likelihood going to happen? So CBT, which has been described by a mate of mine as gaslight yourself to feel better. Sorry, there's CBT therapists out there, but there's different ways out there, different techniques. But okay, so write down. So I use mind maps. I'm not very academic, even though I'm doing this course. So I write anxious or angry or pissed off, circle it, and I get different colour pens, and I let my brain just do what it wants to do. And I'll write things off like work, shopping, money, and I'll just mind map it and do a difference, cloud diagrams, you call it. I don't know, you can't get it right these days. Mind map, brainstorm, whatever you call it. And then I'll do the association of that. And actually, when I look at that piece of paper, and maybe use an A4, it's got like 20, 30 things on it. And actually, I wrote anxious there, but when I read that one there, I get lumps in my throat. I feel a bit, can't like that one. And that one over there makes me feel a bit sick and a bit like I want to cry. They need their own page. Because they're the issue. It wasn't anxious, that was the umbrella for that. And just by sitting down and spending literally 5 minutes doing that every day, don't do it more than an hour before bed. Less than an hour before bed, because you want to process, turn it off. Yes. Just by doing that, you separate your thoughts and your feelings, and you get rid of all this, I call it the emotional washing machine. You take it out and put it on the line, you've got 2 socks there, a pair of undies there, and what matches, and how do I actually feel right now? How many of those things are actually true? Cross out the ones that aren't true, that's a thought, that's not true. That's not actually happening. I'm worried about what's going to happen, cross it out. What are the feelings on there? And where they come from. And just by doing that, it sounds really alien. And people that we're watching this and they go, I'm not doing that, I've tried journaling, it's rubbish. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then you find yourself doing it without actually writing it down. You find yourself going, why do I feel a bit funny? You talk somatic feeling. Why do I suddenly want my dead tense in the shoulders? Why do I feel like I need to go number 2 right now? I'm worried about this. And then, okay, well, why am I worried about that? You shake it off and you can move on. You become more efficient dealing with your emotions. What I think people do is they block the emotions away. Yeah. I give the example of Cameron before. People come to my clinic in the NHS. Dan, my mum just died, my dog just died, I feel sad. Make it go away. Give me a pill, give me antidepressants, give me therapy. Bad news, you're meant to feel sad. If you've just lost your mum or lost your dog, you're meant to feel sad. Yeah. By trying to ignore that by taking antidepressants or taking propranolol or by using cocaine or alcohol, you're not going to stop the feeling, you're going to delay it and get it back of interest later. And I think we got this, especially in our culture, we get this instant dopamine from TikTok and social media, Uber Eats. We have dopamine delivered to our door, to our couch even sometimes. We've got to the habit of trying to avoid the negative feelings. They're a part of life.
Absolutely.
I don't know how I'm having a good day, and I don't know what a bad day feels like. So we need to be able to accept the fact that bad days happen and not be scared of them. And I think just by journaling, just processing, sad, okay, sad, no, pissed off, write it down, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Get it all out from in here, on there, process it.
And sometimes it doesn't even have to be words, does it? It can be shapes or images.
Shapes, pictures, colours. Yeah.
Because I done something for a little while, a couple of years ago, called journal and then burn it.
Yes, that's it, yeah.
But, so that again, there's something me and John have been speaking about, is understanding which emotion you're feeling.
Yeah.
Because like I said before, fear can show its face as anger. But so the one thing me and my missus are doing at the moment is highlighting, when you feel an emotion, how does it feel? Are you getting it from the diaphragm? Is it from across the chest? Is it the back of the head?
Yes.
Fear for me is very gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
Anger is heat at the back of my neck and like a vibrating into the head.
Yeah.
Anxiety, butterflies across the chest. Depression, very weighty, heavy.
Yeah.
Sadness, not depression, it's sadness.
Yeah.
And what I've done is I'm associating colours and pictures with each emotion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then it gives me a better. So I know. Let's take anxiety or sadness. Grey, clouds, puddles, water, rain. Just gives you that.
Those archetypes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's been really, really beneficial for me in understanding what emotions are. And also, when like you said, it's okay to feel emotional, but as long as we don't act on the emotional state, as long as we rationally walk through, or at the end of the emotion, when you're sad or when you're happy or whatever, because a lot of the time, if we act impulsively on emotion, 9 times out of 10, we make the wrong fucking choice, don't we?
Yeah, yeah.
So as long as we're moving forward, once we've experienced that emotion, move forward with rational thought.
Yeah.
I think that's really important in making the right decisions for us as human beings.
And I think you're right as well. I think when we put ourselves under pressure, we start to react and not respond.
Yeah.
So I'm a bugger for this. I go to the supermarket, I'm going for a protein shake and I went to the gym. And I'm on my way back from the gym, sorry. And then I'll go in and, Tesco's, Asda, saying any other brands are available. And I don't need a basket. Oh, actually, I need this, and I need this, and I need this. Next minute, I'm like this. I'm trying to Mr. Bean, trying to walk out of it, and I drop everything. And I think the same for emotions. We're in a world where the emotions are all around us. Situations happen to us. And if we're focusing to just get where we want to leave, great. But life doesn't work that way. You always see things that you need. Experiences always touch on us. So by dealing with it and taking one at a time, do I need this? Do I not need it?
Yeah.
Carrying what you need to carry at that time. Then what happens is your brain uses that logical part and you respond. You don't react. Yeah. Transaction analysis talks about that, the difference between reacting and responding. And quite often we're reactive to the world around us. And it's like pent up, like a bottle of Coke. You shake it, put the Mentos and it blows up.
Yeah.
Let a little fizzles out every now and then you're not going to blow up. You're going to respond. You're going to be able to pour safely. You're going to be able to react to the world, respond to the world around you in an appropriate way, which is not done under pressure.
And that's sort of the test I did for my forward thinking.
Yeah.
That's sort of what did you call it? Transactional analysis.
Yeah.
So that's the process that I went through with John of, am I reactive? Am I proactive? Am I forward thinking? Am I awake thinking?
Yeah.
And I'm very forward.
Yeah.
Whereas, a lot of people who struggle with mental health, it's very reactive. We're not proactive, are we?
Because we're in survival mode.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Yeah.
It's the same with the gym. A lot of people will go to the gym because they're overweight. Not, and then obviously you build the positive habits and patterns, and then it becomes part of your life. But we 9 times out of 10 we're reacting to a situation.
And once we get in shape, you stop going.
Exactly.
And I get antidepressants and pain medications, and I was feeling better, so I stopped taking antidepressants. And now you feel sad. Yeah. Okay, maybe there's a bit of a pattern here, or I put weight on, I've been to the gym for 3 weeks.
Exactly.
Or maybe there's a pattern here.
Yeah.
And I think it's doing the hard work now. Being proactive. Get buying that journal. I mean, like anyone listen to this now, just go and buy yourself a cheap A5 journal and different colour pens.
Just right.
Do you know what I mean? And just have them in your bag, have them in the drawer. You've now got the opportunity to do it if you want to do it. Don't think at 2 o'clock in the morning when you can't sleep, I want to do that thing Dan said.
Yeah.
Now you can't buy your journal.
Yeah.
Buy it now because the future self will be happy for it. Yeah. Yeah.
I've got one more question, mate. Similar, different to the one I asked you last time.
That freebie last time. Yeah. Okay.
So this one might throw you even more.
Oh, ace. Can't wait.
One animal you like.
Yeah.
Your favourite animal.
Yep.
Give me 5 things you like about it and 5 things you don't.
Oh, oh wow, okay.
I got asked this question, and there's a reason why.
Yeah.
It's fucking...
Favourite animal has got to be a wolf. And this is weird because I used to have nightmares about wolves as a kid. Remember Never Ending Story? Yeah. Remember the second one? And it was a nightmare, the darkness one. The wolf's like black, and he was scaring the kid. I think that traumatized me as a kid in a kiddie sort of.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. I am darkness. I'm terrified. As I was shutting the cover, look at the red eyes looking at me. It terrified me. But I'm full of wolf tattoos, actually. But I think what I like about the wolf is the fact that it mates for life. You know, it's got a loyalty to it. It's pack orientated. I'm a loner, and I wish I was more pack orientated. I found because of my background, I've cut myself off from a lot of people. And you see my Facebook posts. If I'm having a bad week, I disappear to wild camping for 3-4 days. You know, with no phone, no tents, just go off in a bivvy bag. You know, yeah, and they're rare because they don't survive in the wild. But we romanticize this idea about it, and that's very realistic. Do you know what I mean? They live in cold, harsh environments, and I think that's true because the wolf's life's not happy. We romanticize it again, and actually they live in miserable places. They eat once every week or 2 weeks, and you know, it's a hard life for them. I also love Sweden and Norway because I've been there loads, so yeah, maybe that's another reason. Fifth reason why I like them.
Four will do. Doesn't have to
they
be
look
flat.
cool. There we go. Yeah, I've got tattoos of it all over. But again, for the same reason that I also maybe don't like them as well, is because they're scary, unpredictable. So we romanticize, oh, it's a dog, oh, I'm going to pick that dog. You know, no, it's going to rip your arm off. Do you know what I mean? It's a big scary thing at the day. It's built on survival and nothing else. And we get these false images about them. There's definitely, I mean, like when I was over in America, I spent a lot of time with Native Americans, and they talk about how the wolf is also, it's the big bad wolf. It's a scary demon, but it's a protector as well. And I think that wild nature, the fact that, you know, you can't romanticize and have a good and a bad in the world. Nature is nature. We're like, we're
There is
part
no
of nature.
good or bad in nature.
There isn't. And we're a part of nature. We forget that.
I agree.
We create this illusion of justice. And as much as, I mean, I spent 5 years with the police training self-defense and first aid, and I love the idea of justice, but it doesn't exist.
No.
You know what I mean? And
one of the presuppositions of neurolinguistics is there are no good or bad people, there are only people.
yes, and we have behaviours which are helpful and unhelpful.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the wolf's a good example of that as well. And I think, the last reason what I said about the lone wolf, it's a concept that sounds great, but it doesn't exist. You know, I think I've just miscounted 5. That's probably 3. But you know what I mean? I'm playing the brain damage in that one. But yeah.
That's it, mate.
Yeah.
That's it.
Being emotional.
Yeah. I wanted to try and keep them to just over an hour or so, just so we can do more episodes. I mean, the beauty, like I said to you last time, we can do it more now because of the full setup. But
I know you are as well. So half an hour every now and then.
Even if it's once a month, once every 5 weeks, you know, we can come on different subjects, another guest who's maybe got issues and whatever it may be. Yeah. And this is the start, hopefully, mate, of something good.
Yeah.
And something positive for a world that's fucking...
That's it. This is needed. You know, the biggest cause of suicide is isolation. Once we connect to another human being, then the loneliness disappears, whether we like them or not. Do you know, maybe don't feel alone. I always say pain sees pain. That's where empathy comes from. There's a guy called Professional Neil Greenberg, who's an expert in trauma, and he said to me that once that resilience doesn't lie within people, it relies between them. And that's completely true. Doing something like this, you're making the invisible visible. You know, we're talking about things that we keep inside, and someone might watch this and go, oh, I relate to that, and for the first time ever feel understood. Do you know, I got a few messages after the last one from people who'd never spoke to a therapist before, and it's helped them get into therapy because of what you do with these podcasts. And I think these are important for those conversations.
There's a quote that I learned from somebody in AA, actually. Yeah. Connection is protection.
Yes, I like that. Oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah, and I believe, you know, isolation feeds addiction, it feeds depression, it feeds anxiety. But if you can, I mean, it's for another podcast, but frequencies.
Yes.
When you talk frequencies and vibrations in human beings, auras of people, just having the ability to sit and be present with another human being.
Mirror neurons. Yeah.
It helps, and it really does. And people don't want to hear your shit. And sometimes people might not be able to deal with hearing with your problem.
Yeah.
But I've listened to Theo Von.
Yeah.
When he did a podcast with the UFC guy, fucking, my brain's gone, skinhead, redneck.
No.
Sean Strickland.
Yes.
And Sean Strickland's really struggling over his traumas.
You know, Sean Strickland will probably now personally email you about this and give you shit about it.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Theo and Sean were sat there.
He was so honest, wasn't he? He was so.
Do you know what the beauty was? Where Sean was really struggling talking about his mum and stepdad, I think it was, or it might have been his real dad, where he used to beat his mother and he'd be lying under the bed listening to him sexually abuse her.
Yeah.
And he starts crying, and Theo says something that it gives me goosebumps. He says to him, "It's okay, dude. We don't have to say anything. We'll just sit here."
Yeah.
Fucking most powerful part of the whole podcast.
Yeah.
We'll just sit and do nothing.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's all a human being needs is somebody, and it gets me emotional.
Yeah.
Sometimes a human just needs to sit with someone.
That's it.
That's it.
It's just being present. And that's the thing about these podcasts is via your phone, these conversations are getting to people's houses, into people's brains. And, you know, if people are watching this and you're struggling, you know, you're not on your own. There's people here, you know? Yeah.
That's it, mate. Got emotional then.
Got me at the end as well. Yeah.
Sound.
Yeah.